Welcome to the Thinking Abyss podcast, a philosophical journey through consciousness, reality, and the phenomena that challenge our understanding of existence. From ancient wisdom to cutting-edge theories, we explore where philosophy meets science and curiosity leads to the edge of the unknown.
I want you to just picture a graph for a second. It's a really simple line graph.
Okay.
And it stretches from, let's say, 10,000 BC all the way up to this morning. The bottom axis is time. The side axis is, let's call it human capability.
Right.
Now, if you start plotting the technology, medicine, computing speed, all that stuff, that line stays incredibly flat for a long, long time.
For most of human history, yeah.
And then right at the very, very end, it just goes vertical. It's a rocket ship. It looks like we are, by every external measure, absolute masters of the universe.
It does look like a rocket ship. And it feels like one. But that right there is the trap.
How so?
Because if you change the label on that vertical axis, if you change it from external capability to raw biological intelligence, that line doesn't go up.
It just stays flat.
It might not even stay flat. If you look at some of the most recent data coming out of Scandinavia, parts of Europe, that line might actually be starting to curve downward.
And that is the, frankly, terrifying question we're getting into today. It's the thing that keeps me up at night when I'm doom scrolling on this little supercomputer I call a phone.
The ultimate question.
Are we, right now, the smartest human beings who have ever lived? Or are we just the lucky beneficiaries of a peak we've already passed, and we're sort of slowly sliding into a cognitive decline while our machines get smarter around us?
It's the ultimate ego trap, isn't it? Because you look around and it seems so obvious. You have that supercomputer in your pocket. I have access to MRI machines that can literally peer inside your skull while you think.
We feel smarter. We must be smarter than a medieval peasant.
Of course. But this whole analysis is about separating the tools from the user. Yeah. It's, here's an analogy. If I hand a scientific calculator to a toddler, that toddler can suddenly do calculus.
Right. Instantly.
But has the toddler actually gotten any smarter? Yeah. Or has the tool just completely compensated for their total lack of ability?
That's the distinction that really unsettled me when I was going through the research for this. It challenges that fundamental story we tell ourselves about progress, that newer always equals better.
It's not that simple.
So we're going to look at the Flynn Effect, that famous, incredible rise in IQ scores, but then we're going to have to look at the reversal.
The reversal is key. And then there are the physical limits, the hard ceiling on the brain itself. Why it literally can't just keep getting bigger and better.
And this idea of the specialist trap?
And of course, we have to define our terms from the get-go. Because smart. That might be one of the most dangerous, slippery words in the English language.
Why dangerous?
It's just sloppy. It conflates so many different things. It mixes up knowledge with processing power, with, wisdom. And they are not the same thing at all.
Okay, so let's start right there, defining the terms. The material we looked at opens with this really important idea about the cultural lens of intelligence. When I say someone is smart in, our world today, what do I actually mean?
Well, in our current context, Western industrialized, grounding in information smart has become almost completely synonymous with abstract reasoning.
Abstract reasoning, like math problems.
Math problems, logic puzzles, coding. Can you manipulate symbols that don't have a direct physical counterpart? Can you look at a sequence of, say, rotating shapes and predict what the next one will be?
The kind of stuff you see on an IQ test.
Exactly. That is precisely what a modern IQ test, like the Vessler or the Sanford-Binet, is designed to measure. It's measuring your ability to, and this is a key phrase, decouple from reality and think in pure abstraction.
Decouple from reality? That sounds almost like a negative thing. It sounds a little pathological.
Well, think about a classic logic puzzle. If all blurgs are green and Tom is a blurg, is Tom green?
Yes, obviously.
Right. But to answer that, what did you have to do? You had to completely ignore the fact that blurs don't exist. They're nonsense. You had to ignore the real world and agree to play within the closed artificial system of the logic game.
Huh. Never thought about it like that.
That's abstract reasoning. It's an incredibly powerful cognitive tool.
Yeah.
But it's just one tool in the toolbox.
Okay, so let's take that toolbox and strip away all the modern stuff. No skyscrapers, no internet, no schools. Let's go back 20,000 years. We're on the African savannah. We are hunter-gatherers. What does smart mean there?
Right. Well, if you're a hunter-gatherer and you spend your day sitting around decoupling from reality and thinking about imaginary green blurgs.
You get eaten by a lion.
You get eaten by a lion.
Look.
In that context, intelligence is visceral. It's concrete. It's extreme sensory pattern recognition. It's noticing that a certain type of bent blade of grass means a specific animal passed by 3 hours ago, not 4.
Okay.
It's 3D spatial navigation. I mean, remembering the exact location of a water source across 400 miles of terrain that changes with the seasons, all without a map or a compass.
And social intelligence, I imagine.
Hugely important. It's manipulating social dynamics within a small, high-stakes tribe where saying the wrong thing can get you exiled, which is a death sentence.
So the research argues that if we took a modern genius, an IQ of 160, a quantum physicist, and we just dropped them into that tribe, they wouldn't just be useless.
They might be considered mentally deficient. Seriously. They would probably be the village idiot. They can't track an animal. They can't identify which plants are poisoned by the vein pattern on the leaf. They can't read the micro-expressions on the tribal leader's face to know he's about to cast them out. Their high IQ software is designed for a completely different operating system.
And the reverse is true, I guess. You bring that hunter-gatherer to our world.
And you give them a Scantron sheet with bubbling multiple-choice questions about abstract shapes. They'd feel miserably. They'd probably wonder what the point of this strange ritual is.
And this is the core of it, does failing the test mean they have less raw capacity? Is their brain a worse machine?
That is the million-dollar question. And the general consensus among the evolutionary biologists we reviewed is probably not. The hardware, the raw processing power, the neuronal density, the speed of the synapses, it hasn't changed much in 50, maybe 100,000 years.
So we're not running a newer processor.
No, we're just running different apps. The brain is like a Swiss Army knife. For the last few centuries, we've been obsessively polishing and sharpening the abstract logic screwdriver, while the sensory awareness saw has gotten rusty from disuse.
Which brings us to this idea of historical comparison. I have this debate with friends all the time. We look back at the giants, Euclid, Archimedes, Confucius, the scholars of the Islamic Golden Age.
The architects of the pyramids.
Right. And we just say, wow, humans back then were on another level. But the source material points out there's a massive statistical error we're making when we do that.
It's survivorship bias.
Yeah.
It's the absolute bane of any kind of historical analysis. We remember Euclid because he was, quite literally, one in millions.
We don't have the diaries of the average Athenian farmer.
We have no idea. We don't have the writings of the millions of people who are just average. So we end up comparing our average citizen today, who can read and has basic schooling, against the absolute top 0.001% of the past.
It's like judging the athletic ability of the entire 1990s by only looking at Michael Jordan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow, everyone in the 90s could dunk from the free throw line. It's a ridiculous comparison.
Okay, that makes sense.
But there is a nuance here that the research brings up. It's this concept of the elite bias. Because even if the biological hardware is the same, the access to software updates has changed completely.
What do you mean software updates?
The main difference between you and Archimedes isn't your brain, it's the library. You are standing on a mountain of inherited knowledge. You learned calculus in a high school class over a few months. Archimedes had to spend his entire life inventing it from scratch.
That's a really humbling thought. Most of my intelligence is really just plagiarism of discoveries made by dead people. I didn't figure out that the Earth goes around the sun. Someone just told me in 3rd grade.
The technical term for it is inherited cognition. You don't have to spend your life figuring out which berries will kill you through trial and error.
Because our ancestors did that for us and wrote it down.
Right. But moving into the 20th century, this is where things get really interesting. We start to see data that challenges this idea that the hardware is stable. We see evidence that suggests we are actually getting better.
The Flynn Effect. This is the part of the research that makes me feel good about humanity. It feels like a win.
It's named after James Flynn. And it's one of the most robust, most replicated findings in all of psychology. This is not a fluke. It's a global phenomenon.
So walk us through the numbers, because when I first read them, they seemed almost too good to be true.
They are staggering. Throughout most of the 20th century in almost every developed nation on Earth, raw IQ scores rose by about 3 points per decade.
3 points every 10 years.
Every 10 years. So if you look at a graph from, say, 1900 to 2000.
That's a 30-point jump in IQ.
It's a 30-point jump. That is 2 full standard deviations. Now, to put that in perspective for you, an IQ of 100 is, by definition, average. An IQ of 130 is considered gifted. That's Mensa level. An IQ of 70 is off of the cutoff for what's considered an intellectual disability.
So A 30-point gain means?
It means the average person today would be considered a near genius by the standards of 1900. And conversely, and this is the part that's hard to swallow, the average person from 1900 would score in the range of intellectual disability on a modern IQ test.
See, that's the part I really struggle with. Because I knew my great-grandparents, they were not intellectually disabled. They ran farms, they fixed engines, they fought in wars, they raised families. They were sharp, they weren't stupid. So what is the test actually catching? Is the test just broken?
It's not that the test is broken. It's that the test is measuring a very specific type of thinking. What it's catching is what some call the mental gym effect.
The mental gym.
Yeah, this is the crucial explanation. It's not that your great-grandfather was stupid, it's that he lived in a profoundly concrete world. His problems were tangible. The fence is broken, so I have to fix the fence. The crop is dry, so I have to water the crop.
Whereas my problems are more like, the Wi-Fi is down, so I need to reset the router, but the IP address seems to be conflicting with another device on the network.
It's even deeper than that. It's about our comfort with hypothetical reasoning. There's a famous study mentioned in the notes from the Soviet psychologist Alexander Luria back in the 1930s.
Okay.
He went to these very remote rural peasants in Uzbekistan, people who had never been to a school. And he gave them a simple logic puzzle. He said, in the far north, where there is snow, all bears are white. Novaya Zemlya is in the far north. What color are the bears there?
And the peasant says white. It's a simple deduction.
No, that's what we would say. The peasant says, I don't know. I've never been to the north. You should go ask someone who has actually been there.
He refuses to play the game.
He completely refuses to decouple from his own lived experience. To him, answering a question about bears he has never personally seen is just, it's lying. It's nonsense. Luria would push them. He'd say, but just based on my words, what do you think?
And what would they say?
They'd say, your words can be carried away by the wind. I trust what I see with my own eyes.
So the Flynn Effect is basically measuring our training, our willingness to play these abstract hypothetical games. We've been trained since kindergarten to treat words and symbols as real things we can manipulate.
That's a huge part of it. That explains the style of thinking that's being rewarded. But we can't ignore the biological side of it, too, the environmental enhancers.
Right. The source lists nutrition, health, and education.
We can't ignore the meat. The brain is an organ.
Nutrition seems like a huge one. It's just obvious. If you starve an organ, it doesn't grow properly.
And it's not just about simple starvation or calories. It's about micronutrients. Iodine deficiency alone, for example, used to knock 10 to 15 points off the average IQ in entire regions of the world.
10 to 15 points, just from a lack of iodine.
A huge amount. We started iodizing salt, and boom, global intelligence got a massive boost. The same goes for iron deficiency, which causes cognitive sluggishness. And think about environmental toxins.
Like lead.
Lead paint. Lead in gasoline. For decades, we were unknowingly pumping a powerful neurotoxin into the air and into our children's environments. When we finally removed it, it's like we took the brakes off the brain.
So the argument is we didn't really evolve a better engine in the last century.
No.
We just finally put high-octane fuel in the tank and stopped driving around with the parking brake on.
That's a perfect summary.
Yeah.
The engine, the basic human DNA is the same. But the performance is optimized because the environment is finally cleaner and richer.
And then there's the education aspect. We literally send our kids to brain training camp for 15 years.
Exactly. School is, in many ways, just long-term training for IQ tests. We teach classification. This is a mammal. This is a reptile. This is an amphibian. That is a form of abstract categorization.
How would a pre-modern person categorize animals?
Maybe by things I can eat, things that will eat me, and things that are irrelevant. It's a practical, not a scientific taxonomy. We are training entirely different neural pathways from a very young age.
Okay, so this all paints a pretty rosy picture. We're getting smarter because we're healthier, better fed, and more educated. If this just kept going, we'd all eventually be super geniuses.
If it kept going.
But the data has turned. This is the reversal you mentioned. And this is where the story starts to get a lot darker.
Yes. It really seems like the party is over. The data, particularly from places like Norway, Denmark, the UK, France, basically the first countries to hit that industrial and nutritional peak, it shows something worrying.
What does it show?
For cohorts born after the mid-1970s, and especially after about 1990, the scores have stopped rising. And in the last 15 to 20 years, in many of those places, they have actually started to drop.
Drop by how much? Is this a blip on the radar or is it a clear trend?
It looks like a trend. Some data sets show a drop of about 0.2 to 0.3 IQ points per year. It's not a crash, but it's a slow, steady leak in the tire. It's actively undoing the progress of the Flynn effect.
So what happened? If nutrition is still good, I mean, arguably we have too many calories now, not too few, and school is still mandatory. What broke?
There are two main buckets of theories here. The first and least controversial is the ceiling effect.
Okay.
The idea is that we've already picked all the low-hanging fruit. You can't be more than well-nourished. Once you have enough iodine and iron and calories, eating more doesn't make your brain bigger or faster. We've maxed out the environmental boosts.
So we hit the maximum potential of the existing hardware. We optimized the environment as much as we could, and now we're just plateauing at the top.
Right, but that explains a plateau. It doesn't explain a drop. To explain an actual decline, we have to look at how the environment has changed again. The mental gym is a different place now.
Digital distortion, that was the term the source used.
Exactly. The leading hypothesis is that the modern digital environment, social media, algorithmic feeds, 15-second video clips, is fundamentally different from the kind of complexity that drove the Flynn effect in the 20th century.
What was the complexity then?
The 20th century was about navigating complex systems, reading subway maps, assembling furniture from a diagram, reading a long novel with a complex plot, repairing a radio.
And the 21st century is about
fragmented attention.
It's the difference between, lifting a really heavy weight slowly and carefully and just twitching your muscles really, really fast 1,000 times.
That's a fantastic analogy. Deep reading, sitting with a dense book for 3 hours, is like a heavy lift for the brain. It trains your working memory, your sequential logic. It forces you to build and hold a complex mental architecture in your head. Chapter 1 connects to this theme in Chapter 10.
And the scrolling a feed.
Scrolling a feed trains rapid, superficial pattern recognition, sure. But it actively degrades your capacity for sustained attention. And real-world complex problem solving, not to mention IQ tests, require sustained attention.
I feel this personally, I really do. I feel like 10 or 15 years ago, I could sit and read a dense article for an hour. Now, after 3 paragraphs, I feel that itch, the need to check my phone. It honestly feels like my brain has been physically rewired.
It has been. Neuroplasticity cuts both ways. Your brain gets good at what you make it do. If you practice distraction all day, you will become a world-class master of distraction. If you stop practicing deep focus, that neural circuit will literally atrophy.
Okay, so that's the environmental theory. But the sources also go into a much more controversial idea, the dysgenic argument. We should probably handle this one carefully.
Yes, it's very sensitive and gets misinterpreted a lot. But the core of the scientific argument is about evolutionary pressure.
What's the logic?
For 99% of human history, there was a pretty strong positive correlation between success, however you define that, being a good hunter, a leader, and fertility. If you were competent, you got more resources, and more of your children survived to reproductive age.
So evolution was, in a sense, selecting for competence and intelligence.
Roughly, yes.
Yeah.
But what's happened in modern post-industrial societies, that correlation has not just disappeared, it's flipped.
It's a negative correlation now.
It's a well-documented negative correlation between years of education, which is a rough proxy for IQ and fertility. Generally speaking, the more advanced degrees a person has, the fewer children they are likely to have, and they tend to have them much later in life.
It's basically the plot of the movie Idiocracy, the idea that the most educated people are carefully planning to have 1 child at age 35 while others are starting at 20 and having 4.
It is the idiocracy argument, boiled down. However, and this is a massive crucial however that the sources really emphasize, geneticists urge extreme caution here, because intelligence is what they call polygenic. It isn't controlled by 1 or 2 genes, like eye color. It's influenced by thousands of different gene variants, each with a tiny effect. It takes a very, very long time to shift the genetic average of a huge population for a trait that complex.
So the drop we're seeing now, the reversal.
It's happening way too fast to be primarily genetic. A few decades is a blink of an eye in evolutionary terms.
So it's probably not that we are actively breeding ourselves into stupidity. It's more likely that we are just distracting ourselves into stupidity.
That seems to be the most immediate culprit, yes. The environment is making our thinking shallower. But the genetic question is still out there as a potential long-term variable. If that reverse selection pressure continues for, say, 500 years, you would expect to see an impact.
Okay, so we've got the Flynn effect pushing us up for a century, and now this reversal possibly pulling us back down. But this all assumes the ceiling is infinitely high. Let's talk about the hard limits. Is it even possible for a human to be, say, twice as smart as Einstein?
This is where we run into the hardware problem. We like to think of the brain as this magical cloud of thought that can just expand forever. But it's not. It's meat. It's a physical organ.
And it's very expensive meat.
Incredibly expensive. As we said, your brain is maybe 2% of your body's weight, but it burns 20% of your resting energy. That is a metabolic disaster unless that organ is providing a massive, overwhelming survival advantage.
It's like putting a supercomputer into a Honda Civic. It's just going to drain the battery instantly.
That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
If we were to evolve a brain that was, say, 50% bigger, we would either need to consume drastically more calories every single day, or we'd have to shrink our muscles and our digestive system to pay for it. Evolution is an accountant. It has to balance the books. You can't just add a massive new GPU without upgrading the whole power supply.
And there's an even harder physical limit, right? The birth canal dilemma.
The obstetrics dilemma, yes. This is the hard stop. Human childbirth is already uniquely dangerous and difficult compared to any other primate, precisely because our heads are so disproportionately large.
Macy.
The baby actually has to rotate its head and shoulders during birth just to squeeze through the mother's pelvis. If our brains, and therefore our heads, got significantly bigger, natural birth would become mechanically impossible.
So unless evolution can figure out how to radically widen the female pelvis.
Which would then ruin our ability to walk and run efficiently, creating a whole new set of problems.
So we're capped.
We are pretty much biologically capped. Or the only other way around it is for babies to be born even more prematurely. Human babies are already born completely helpless compared to other mammals. A foal can walk within an hour. A human baby is a helpless lump for a year.
Because we have to get them out before the head gets too big to exit.
Exactly. If we cook the brain for longer inside the womb to make it bigger, the baby might be helpless for 2 or 3 years. The strain on the parents would be evolutionarily untenable.
So we are stuck. We are basically running the latest, most advanced software, modern physics, philosophy, computer science on hardware that was finalized in the Stone Age.
And that can't be upgraded because of the plumbing and wiring constraints of the building.
So what did we do? If you can't upgrade the individual unit.
You upgrade the network.
Right.
You stop trying to make each computer faster, and instead you link them all together to create a supercomputer.
Which leads us to specialization versus generalization. This, to me, is the central paradox of modern life. We can confidently say humanity has never been smarter. We have the James Webb Telescope, we have mRNA vaccines, we have particle accelerators.
The collective is brilliant.
But the human, the individual.
The human is a cog, a
Yeah.
tiny, specialized cog. This is the specialist trap. If you go back to that hunter-gatherer tribe, every single adult, male or female, was a generalist. They had to be.
They knew how to do everything.
Almost everything required for survival. They could make clothes, find food, build a shelter, help deliver a baby, track an animal, fight off a predator. They had a moderate skill in a huge range of domains.
And today, I mean, I can host this conversation. If you ask me to grow wheat, I will starve to death. If you ask me to fix my car's transmission, I'm walking. If you ask me to build a shelter from scratch, I am sleeping in the rain.
We have made a grand bargain. We have traded individual general intelligence for collective specialized intelligence. As a species, we know infinitely more. As individuals, we know infinitely less about how the world actually works.
The source called it the illusion of explanatory depth.
Yes, it's a fantastic concept. There was a great study where researchers would ask people a simple question, like on a scale of 1 to 7, how well do you understand how a zipper works?
And everyone says 6 or 7. I use one every day. Of course I know how it works.
Exactly. Then they say, okay, great. Please draw a step-by-step diagram of the mechanism. Explain the physics of how the angled teeth interlock and separate.
And nobody can do it.
Nobody can do it. And their self-rating plummets to a 2 or a 3. People realize they don't actually know how a zipper works. They just know that society knows how a zipper works, and they can use one.
That's actually terrifying. My own sense of competence is a complete illusion. I'm just relying on millions of other specialists knowing things so I don't have to.
And this connects directly to the idea of externalized intelligence. You said at the beginning you feel smart because of your smartphone. The source asks a very pointed question. Is that intelligence yours?
It feels like it's mine. I am the one using it to navigate, to find information, to solve problems.
But if I take the phone away from you, the capability vanishes instantly. It's the calculator dilemma again. If you practice arithmetic problems using a calculator, you will always get the right answer, but you will never build the neural pathways for doing mental math. In fact, they'll weaken.
And the example of GPS.
It's the starkest one. We have MRI data on this. The hippocampus is the part of the brain that creates mental maps of space. London taxi drivers who have to memorize thousands of streets, the knowledge, have demonstrably larger hippocampi than the average person.
And for the rest of us who use GPS for everything,
Our hippocampi are, on average, smaller. We've outsourced our navigation faculty, and the part of the brain responsible for it has literally shrunk in response.
so we're becoming more efficient, but also more fragile. We are outsourcing our core cognitive functions to our tools.
We are becoming the peripheral devices for the great digital network. We are the eyeballs that look at the screen and the thumbs that type the query. The actual thinking is happening in a server farm in Oregon.
And that network, it's about to get a mind of its own. We have to talk about the elephant in the room. We have to talk about AI.
This changes the entire equation, because for all of human history, intelligence on this planet meant human intelligence. We were the only game in town. We had a monopoly.
And now we're actively, purposefully building a competitor.
A competitor that operates on completely different principles.
And if you look at the scoreboard in the games we used to think defined intelligence, they're winning.
They are chess. That fell decades ago.
Yeah.
Deep Blue beat Kasparov in '97. Go, the ancient Chinese game that's exponentially more complex.
Done. AlphaGo beat Lee Sedol. I remember watching that. It felt like a turning point.
It was. And now even things like complex protein folding, which was a grand challenge of biology, are being solved by AI. The things we thought were the pinnacle of human intellect, logic, strategy, complex calculation, turned out to be relatively easy for computers.
Which is Moravec's paradox, right?
Exactly. The idea that the hard stuff is easy for AI, but the easy stuff is hard.
The stuff a toddler can do.
Right. Folding a towel, understanding a joke, recognizing sarcasm, navigating a crowded room without bumping into anyone, that stuff turns out to be incredibly difficult for AI. Because those are the ancient skills. Our biological brain spent 50 million years of primate evolution perfecting the survival stuff.
So for now, at least, humans still hold the edge in things like creativity, social nuance, and what was the term? Transfer learning.
Yes, and transfer learning may be the most important moat protecting us right now.
So define that for us. What is it?
It's the ability to learn a lesson or a principle in one context and then apply it to a totally different novel context. If you learn about strategy by playing a video game, you might be able to apply some of those leadership skills to managing a team at work.
Okay.
An AI that is trained to be the best in the world at that video game is completely and utterly useless at managing a team at work. It's brittle. It breaks as soon as you change the rules of the game. It cannot generalize.
But for how long will that be true? The source also brings up this burden of knowledge problem as a reason we actually need AI to help us.
This is fascinating research by a guy named Benjamin Jones. He looked at the age of Nobel Prize winners and great inventors over the last century.
And what did he find?
100 years ago, physicists were making revolutionary breakthroughs in their 20s. Einstein was 26 during his miracle year. The founders of quantum mechanics were all incredibly young.
And today?
Today, the average age of a major scientific breakthrough is pushing 40 or even 50.
Why? Are we just getting dumber?
No, it's because the database of existing human knowledge has become so massive. You have to spend the first 30 or 40 years of your life just learning what we already know to get to the frontier. You need a bachelor's, a master's, a PhD. You do multiple postdocs.
We're running out of lifespan to actually innovate. We spend it all just catching up.
We are hitting a cognitive horizon. We simply can't cram enough information into one biological brain to make the next big leap in some of these fields.
Unless we have a partner.
Unless we have an intelligent partner that doesn't die, doesn't forget, and can read every physics paper ever published in a single afternoon.
So the optimistic view is that AI becomes a kind of scaffold. It lets us reach higher than our biological limits would ever allow. It does the heavy lifting of data crunching, and we provide the creative spark, the direction.
We become the conductors, and the AI is this infinitely large and capable orchestra. That's the hope.
And the fear.
The fear, of course, is obsolescence. The fear is that the orchestra realizes it doesn't need the conductor. If we ever achieve AGI, artificial general intelligence, where the machine does have that transfer learning, then we are, by definition, no longer the smartest entities on Earth. The peak of intelligence shifts from biology to silicon.
Which brings us to the final and maybe the most crucial distinction of all, because all this talk about being smart misses the point if we don't talk about wisdom.
They are not the same thing, and conflating them is maybe the biggest mistake our species can make right now.
How do you define the difference?
Intelligence is how. Intelligence is the ability to solve complex problems. How do I split the atom? How do I edit a gene with CRISPR? How do I build a globally recursive algorithm? Intelligence is fundamentally about power.
And wisdom.
Wisdom is why, or maybe should we?
Yeah.
Or should I split the atom? Under what circumstances should I edit the human genome? Wisdom is knowing which problems are worth solving and understanding the second and third order consequences of your solutions.
The source material had this stark mental image of two graphs. One is the power or intelligence curve, and it's exponential. It's going straight up to the sky.
Right.
And the other is the wisdom curve, and it's just flat.
Or you could argue it's declining.
Yeah.
We are essentially primate brains from the savannah with godlike technology. We still have the same emotional software that's geared for tribal conflict over scarce resources, but now we have nuclear weapons and social media.
We're toddlers with loaded handguns.
That's a very common and I think very apt analogy.
It really does feel like that when you watch the news. We have the technical intelligence to solve massive problems like climate change or global hunger. The tools exist. But we seem to lack the collective coordination, the wisdom to actually implement the solutions.
And that is the ultimate risk of the Flynn Effect obsession. For a century, we focused on making people better processors, better at abstract logic puzzles. We didn't necessarily make them more ethical, more patient, more empathetic, or better long-term thinkers. Being smarter has not automatically made us good or sensible.
So let's try to land this plane. We started with this huge question. Are we the smartest humans who have ever lived?
And the answer is a very messy, very unsatisfying yes, but.
So biologically, what's the verdict?
Biologically, no. The hardware is basically the same as it was 50,000 years ago. You could even argue it's slightly atrophied because we've outsourced all of our core survival skills.
Okay. But culturally or environmentally?
Environmentally and culturally, yes, absolutely. We have downloaded a massive operating system of inherited knowledge that makes us functionally superhuman compared to any of our ancestors. But that's a borrowed intelligence.
And the trend might be reversing.
The trend may be reversing as our environment shifts from promoting deep thought to promoting distraction.
And the future.
The future of intelligence is probably not biological. We have hit the hard ceiling. The only way up from here is integration. Merging in some way with the external intelligence we've built.
I want to leave everyone listening with the final thought experiment from the conclusion of the source material. It's the ultimate ego check. It's the thing that really, really stuck with me.
The naked in the forest test.
The naked in the forest test. So, imagine this. We take everything away from you. We strip away your phone, your internet access, your car, your house. We take away your specialized job training in marketing or accounting or whatever it is you do. We leave you with just your raw biological brain, and we drop you naked into a pristine forest. And right next to you, we magically teleport your ancestor from 20,000 years ago.
You're both starting from scratch. Nothing but your brains in your bodies, no Google, no library.
The question is, who is the genius in that forest, and who is the helpless, useless burden?
I know for a fact I'd be dead in 3 days. I'd eat the wrong mushroom or drink from the wrong stream or just freeze to death on the first night. The ancestor would be the one keeping me alive out of pity.
And it suggests that while humanity as a collective has ascended to the stars, the individual biological unit has actually become a kind of very specialized, very fragile, domesticated animal.
We traded our internal fire for the warmth of an external collective furnace.
That is the story of civilization in a nutshell.
It is. And maybe the smartest thing we can do now is just to recognize that trade-off and that fragility.
Well, on that profoundly humbling note, I think I'm going to go try to learn how a zipper actually works. Thanks for helping us unpack all this.
My pleasure. It was fascinating.
And thank you all for listening. We'll see you next time.